All right, I'd like to introduce Dr. Robin Fiorito. She graduated from Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine in 2006. Prior to attending veterinary school, she worked as a technician in small animal general practice and Texas A&M's Small Animal Intensive Care Unit, where she gained her first experiences in teaching and learning using simulation. Following time spent in private practice, Dr. Fiorito returned to Ross as a faculty member in 2008. Her time at Ross has been dedicated to developing the Clinical Skills Program as an instructor, manager, and director of the Clinical Skills Laboratory. Dr. Fiorito and her team have developed several clinical skills teaching models and learning resources for both students and instructors of clinical skills. Her research interests include student learning, effective teaching, and assessment methods specific to clinical skills training. Take it away, Robin.
So good morning, or actually afternoon now for most of us, or for some of us. So I was asked to speak on the use of the online portfolio system to track students' performance of clinical skills. And basically, portfolios and competency tracking. So I felt those definitions were a bit broad for the way that we're using it. The program that I've developed is all preclinical, and basically what we've done is we've broken down procedures into tasks, and the students are performing specific skills. So as opposed to doing a spay procedure, they're actually doing just ligature placement in a particular lab. So alternative definitions, basically we're documenting our formative assessments of their skills in laboratories by having them log their skills. And we're tracking levels of competency by doing this. So I put this picture in because I'm sort of here at the bottom of this little mountain here, well, big mountain, when it comes to the portfolio system. So I've just started my endeavor in this project. We started using e-folio 3 years ago for its scheduling component, and PXDX was a handy little part of it, and PXDX is the part that we're using to track the student skills. So an effective and practical portfolio should be user-friendly, efficient in terms of cost and time demands, and promote reflective practice on the part of the teacher and the learner. In 2011, we implemented our pilot project using PX, and the implementation, we basically did the pilot with 20 students from a third semester clinical skills group. And at that time, clinical skills wasn't a mandatory part of the curriculum. There was 90% attendance in all of our clinical skills labs, but they were all supplemental to the curriculum. When we did the implementation, we started with instructor training and support, and then student training on the use of the e-folio system as well through lectures and PowerPoints. But most of it was done by the instructor. We didn't have any administrative support outside of our faculty and our technicians who were also using it. So the method that we used during the pilot project were that the student entered their skills, and then they would come into the lab and go through the laboratory and be formatively assessed by the instructors that were doing small group work. And so they would come in and do their ligature practice, and then we would give them feedback. If the student was able to perform the skill at the level expected, then it was documented as a direct assessment by the instructor. So following the laboratory, the instructor then went back into the system and checked off that skill directly. So was this method effective and practical? Well, it was user-friendly, fairly user-friendly. There are some hiccups with e-folio use, and I'm not going to go into detail exactly about all the little issues that we had, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. We found that it did promote reflective practice on the part of the teacher, or significantly. But as for the learner, the reflective practice was more out of the formative verbal feedback that they got within the laboratory, and not necessarily the portfolio itself, because there were no written evaluations. So was it efficient in terms of cost and time demands? We felt that for 20 students it probably was okay, but if we were going to roll it out to our larger classes, that it was definitely not, the method that we were using was not efficient in terms of cost and time demands. So positive outcomes from this pilot were that instruction became much more individualized. Instructors were much more aware of which students were struggling, so that because they had to check them off for their skills, they were more likely to go over to the student and really evaluate them and give them feedback. And it also gave us a really good idea of where we should put the clinical skills in the curriculum as we were developing the course. Because if it looked like all 20 students weren't getting a particular skill in that laboratory. Maybe there were too many skills in laboratory, or that skill was a level that should be given later in the curriculum. We got a large amount of data from this because eValue is wonderful in the fact that you can click a button and you have a large amount of data that you can then put into Excel very easily, export into Excel. So lessons learned, compliance was actually fairly good. The students received the instruction very well and went in and entered their skills. But the issues that we had were more related to errors that the students made in entering those skills, or they would attend laboratory without having entered them and then be asking questions during the lab as to how to enter their skills, which was taking away from instruction time. The implementation was fairly good. I think we covered most bases. I think we probably could have created a little bit more training beforehand and done some more workshops with the staff and the students to increase compliance and also decrease errors. And the time that it took to do the direct assessments and actually enter the skills was much more than we thought it was going to be. We did have iPads within the laboratory to use to document the skills, but if the students didn't enter them before they came to lab, then we couldn't check them off, and we'd have to then help them learn how to enter them and check them off after the laboratory. We also had issues because it's an online program that if our internet was out or we had power outages, which is common in St. Kitts, that we wouldn't be able to use the iPad within lab, so we were finding that we'd have to go back to our offices and then enter them afterwards. So we weren't able to check them off within the laboratory, which was our hope. Another thing that it did, it really helped us with evidence-based teaching. So the data that we collected from the portfolio really helped us re-examine our assessment tools and how we were training the raters. So these are all formative assessments, but we still want to make sure that our inter-rater reliability is good. And so it really helps with that, having that data, as well as the curriculum design for the skills curriculum. So actions taken based on that pilot project were to create a culture of e-folio use. So just as we've broken down the tasks of skills, we'd like to break down the tasks of entering skills into the e-folio, and hopefully by the time that they would get to their clinical year where they might be using an e-folio in one of our affiliate schools, they would have general knowledge of how to use it. So we've rolled out the Essential Veterinary Skills course, and within that course there's a mandatory participation in the e-folio as part of the course. For time management, we provide better training and support for the faculty and staff using it, and we've also created quite a few of our own training documents. eValue does have provide training online as well, but we found the way that we were using eValue was a little bit novel compared to how maybe the clinical application is used. So we provided better support and training documents for students and faculty, and they're available online. We also defined administrative tasks and delegated to program coordinator and course coordinator the management of the portfolio to relieve some of the stress put on the instructors. So in May of 2013, we rolled out the Essential Veterinary Skills course. It crosses 5 semesters. There's about 750 students enrolled. The preclinical e-folio holds 85 skills, and it's expanding. And the participation in the e-folio is just a small component of the student's grade. As we're working through all the little glitches, we don't want to make it a huge amount of their grade. And the current process is that instead of the students entering their skills prior to laboratory, students attend the skills laboratory. They then perform the skill, and it's formatively assessed by the instructor. If a student performs the skill at the level expected, then they go back to enter their skill into their e-folio. So it's much more passive on the instructor's part, because when they enter it post-lab, it's set up in the system so that it's entered and it's checked off. The students not performing at the skill at the level expected have to attend a remedial lab, and they won't enter their skills into the e-folio until they have accomplished that skill at the level expected. So monitoring of the e-folio and of student attendance is done by the course and program coordinators. eValue sends out procedure reports on a regular basis, and you can actually set the date that you want that procedure report. So if you have a laboratory on Thursday and you want your students to be entering the skills post-lab, you would have that procedure report sent to you on a Friday or whatever time frame that you required for the students to enter them. And then you would know whether they entered those skills, so you could then document it as part of their grade. the program coordinator will send interim reports as to compliance as well as errors that are made on the student's part. So the program coordinator will go in and export an Excel spreadsheet and send it to the course coordinators, and that will notify the course coordinators of which students are having trouble entering their skills. But our program coordinator is also wonderful in the fact that she emails the students directly as a mass email and tells them the common errors that are occurring and how to fix them, and sends them a guide. And she only sends it to the students who are having trouble entering the skills, so that our students don't all get mass emails and are not sure as to whether they're entering them correctly or not. So key elements to the success of this was providing clear guidelines of expectation of skill level. So we've actually done task analysis on all of the skills that we're teaching, and provided a workshop for our instructors on how to give appropriate formative feedback that engages the student in their own learning. And we have also created a lot of guides for the use of e-value. Also creating a point value towards the course grade, so that when students enter skills, their time entering those skills is given credit. And then the portfolio administrator you have to have one. So our program coordinator for the skills lab is wonderful in the fact that she helps manage the system, supports the students and the faculty in its use. We wouldn't be able to do it without her. So areas that still need work are student compliance, creating the e-folio culture. 89% of our students in the EVSA course entered their skills, but of that 89%, 38% made errors, and we still haven't done an audit to see, after the program coordinator sent them the email telling them of these errors, whether they actually went back in and fixed them. And there's definitely further research that is needed. So current and further research projects that came from the data that we collected through this portfolio. Inter-rater reliability, we're doing a project with inter-rater reliability using different assessment tools based on our task analysis. And we're looking at the correlation between the student skills portfolio, our formative assessments, and their summative assessment outcomes on procedures later on. And then also the effects of adding written evaluations to promote more reflective practice on the part of the learner have been considered. And at this point, I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have. So you mentioned that clinicians check off the skill if the student performs it successfully, yes or no. Completion checklist. Do the clinicians use a rubric or something like it to evaluate the student's proficiency? So the summative assessment that they have later on, yes, they use a rubric. What we're doing right now is we're creating 2 assessment tools, one rubric, and then we're also going to use just below minimum requirements and meets expectations. So we're going to compare the two, when we use a rubric compared to using basically what we do is we meet before and after the beginning and the end of the semester to go over our expectations of that skill level. So what method are you using to establish inter-rater reliability? So we are using video recording of students doing the skills. So we're going to have 20 students video digitally recorded doing the skills, and then we're going to have the instructors watch the videos and do their assessments based on the way that we're doing it now. And then we're going to have them watch the videos again randomly sorted without the numbers attached to them using the rubrics. So that's how we're going to distinguish look at the inter-rater reliability the way that we're using it now, doing it now, and then also look at it using different assessment tools, one being a rubric. On the expense of the system, that's a hard one for me. I'm giving you more from the faculty perspective, and eValue has several components. So the cost would be based on how many components you use of the system. We have purchased all of the components, and I'm not sure, depending on the users, you get discounts as well, so that would be difficult for me to tell you exactly how much it would cost, but I can get you in touch with them, and they'd be able to help you with that better. Are there any other questions I might be able to help you with? Well, thanks everyone for putting this together. Robert and Chris, it's been fantastic. So appreciate it.